Okay, there we go. We're live now. So we're hopping on tonight. And for those of you who have never met our phenomenal guest, we've got Bronnie Thompson with us, who Eric and I are both massive fans of. So she's with us all the way from Christchurch, New Zealand tonight. And Bronnie is a bit of a master when it comes to motivational interviewing. So that's what we're going to have a chat about tonight. So before I start going, Bronnie, is there anything that you'd like to say to introduce yourself to our fans on Facebook?
Oh, no, many of you will know who I am, and I've met at the San Diego Pain Summit. I've met quite a bunch, and then I was up in Vancouver, when was it? 2015, I think, 2016, something around then, and spent some time up there, and it's a fantastic place. Love it. Yeah. Love Canadians. Yeah. You have good bacon.
Yeah.
It's true.
We do. When we talked about when we talked about bringing you up for to put a course on next year, I'll make sure that we get you some good Red Barn bacon. It's phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yes, and some good beer.
And beer.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Perfect. So just getting into it, I think the first things to talk about is that you're involved in a master's degree in pain over in New Zealand. So we'd love to hear about what that's all about.
Okay, so the master's program, I'm the program coordinator, so I'm sort of the director of the program for the pain and pain management masters. It's a master's in health sciences run through the University of Otago, and it's entirely taught online. So that means that people from around the world can enroll in it. And we accept massage therapists because anybody who's done a 3-year health sciences degree is eligible for this program. So as long as you've done 3 years, we're fine. And we've got 2 of my favourite massage therapists currently studying. That's Rachel Arquette and Odette.
Odette Wood.
Yeah, Odette. So they're both enrolled at the moment, but we've actually had about 4 or 5 massage therapists come through over the years, and it's fantastic. Yeah, really enjoy having them there. So awesome. The program is run along the lines of the IASP Interprofessional Pain Curriculum, which sometimes people stop and think, oh, that's not what I expected, because we're looking at how different professions can understand and talk with one another about pain and a bigger picture of pain than it's just nociception and an indicator of disease. We go beyond that. It's great. Enjoy it.
Awesome. We actually did a talk with a friend of ours from Saskatchewan last week, Danelle DeGowan, and she's got a PhD, and she was part of her PhD, I think, and part of what she talked about was is different professions talking to each other and learning from each other and taking little bits from each other so that we all get better. So you yourself you're an occupational therapist, correct?
Yeah, with a master's in psychology. I got warped by them, and I teach mainly. Well, I teach 5th-year medical students, and I teach the postgrads as well. So there's across our program there are probably just about every health profession represented, from
That's
physios,
amazing.
Psychologists, OTs, nurses, podiatrists, pharmacists, osteopaths, chiropractors, podiatrists, psychologists, and every flavour of medical practitioner that you can think of, which is fantastic. Yeah, we're very lucky.
And how do you find, Bronnie, the kind of interprofessional collaboration is between the people? Do you find that they enjoy learning from other professions?
To varying degrees. I think some of our students have never worked with someone from a different profession. So if you've gone to, say, I'm going to pick on a profession at random, if you've gone to chiropractic school and you've never been exposed to or worked alongside a physio, an osteopath, or a psychologist, it's quite a different language. And same for the medical practitioners who might have been familiar with professions in hospital while they were training in their early years, and then they go off into primary care and they just might see a physio, they might see a pharmacist, and they'll have practice nurses, but that's about it. And so for some of them it can be a little bit concerning, like, what do you mean? You know about pain too? And some of our perspectives, some of the ways that we use language, the assumptions that we have underneath terms that we use, even to the word pain, and these make us talk past one another. So when we talk about pain assessment, I'm thinking experiences, the qualities of pain, blah, blah. And some of our medical colleagues are thinking diagnosis. Which type of diagnosis have I got? And if I fix that, then the pain will go. So why are we talking about this experience that people have and getting into philosophy? So, yeah.
Do you find there's a big difference in terms of how the like the biomedical approach that these guys are taking? You find by the time they're finished the program that they are more in line to understanding the experience of pain rather than just this very linear fixing dysfunction kind of process?
Yeah, I do. I find too that it depends on their current practice, because what you do a lot of, you'll get better at and you'll know more about. So if you're not working with other professions or thinking beyond the diagnostic label, then that part of your learning will get rusty and not used. But I find that most people will say, I didn't think about pain this way, and I'm shifting the way that I do stuff. So we've got Rachel with her assessment of pain using the brief pain inventory prior to people coming in for massage. That's her entry intake form. We've got a chiropractor in the North Island who's completely revolutionised his practice. So he uses outcome measures that are biopsychosocial. So it really depends on the person and what they're willing and ready to adopt. But we encourage people to be reflective about what they see as essential and the different ways that they might be able to change their way of going about pain assessment and management in response to the kinds of materials that we inflict on them, I was going to say, that we expose them to.
It sounds like a great program. I remember years ago when I did my master's, I actually looked into your program and contacted the people there. But the unfortunate thing was for international students, it was about $50,000.
Yeah, it's very expensive. That's
a different
curse
program.
of our government. It's the same for Australians who, if you're a New Zealander living in Australia, you have to pay international fees, which makes it impossible. So yeah, it's pretty much like every country likes to maximise what they can make out of students.
Oh yeah, we do the same thing here.
I just put it out for free, but I have to eat.
Yeah. I think for anybody listening, I looked into the program, and I think when you look at the curriculum of it, it seems, if you have any interest in biopsychosocial or pain science, I think it looks phenomenal. And I know from talking with Rachel before at all the San Diego Pain Summits about her experience, it sounds fantastic. So I'm really excited that you're involved in it. There's massage therapists involved as well.
Better do it.
Yeah. Those two are just bringing some really new and wonderful nuances to what they're learning. And the really exciting thing is to see how they're influencing other massage therapists, both in New Zealand and elsewhere, through the way that they're thinking about them and the respect that they're gaining from the other students because of their perspective, which is unique. It's been really refreshing to see that people that can, who know that a lot of what they're doing with hands-on is about meaning and comfort, not cure and, energy meridians, that they can say that, that's what they're doing and it's okay. And by the way, it's not just the hands-on part, it's the narrative that we use at the same time. That just makes me feel so happy, because that means that the people that go to see them, and lots of people go and seek hands-on therapy, are going to get a much more informed narrative, and they're not going to get those misinterpretations that we see so often on social media, especially.
I love simply just the ripple down effect of that out of everybody that's taking that course, right? Because if you've got general practitioners, chiropractors, physios that are all coming to their patients with the same message, the ripple down effect from that and the people that those patients are going to go talk to is massive.
We hope so. I guess the challenge from our perspective is that, so I'm providing this information and education, and then the students are trying to implement it, but some of our, like anywhere, our policies and procedures and the structures that surround us in health policy especially, and practice, make it really hard to implement. Like people will start by saying, oh, I want to do these assessments and use these psychometric assessments for fear avoidance, whatever, and then find that patients don't like them, or the rest of the clinicians say, what are you doing that for? I don't use that. Just guess, just ask them. And so there's always a flow on as theory meets reality, and everybody's constraints in their practice are going to be slightly different. And that means different things are going to be able to be implemented and others might not be. And that's, change is slow. Damn. Because I feel like I've been saying the same thing for, most of my clinical life, that pain's not just one thing, it's a whole bunch of things. And the messages are not that different, just that we've got a lot more science around it. Which is, I suppose, good. We got the idea originally.
Yeah.
And we got it fairly clear.
And do you feel like there's and just because I'm not sure, is there a bit of a movement in New Zealand towards this type of learning, or is it sort of typical as it is everywhere else, so that it's just it's an iceberg that's moving and you get a few people on board and hopefully change comes eventually?
Yeah, I think we've been really fortunate in that the original Yellow Flags document, so the psychosocial risk factors for ongoing disability, were developed in my department by my colleague Nick Kendall, and I provided the work section of that document. And that was adopted by our national health insurer, or national accident insurer. And so ever since then, there's been a real active push away from passive therapies to a biopsychosocial understanding, understanding that it's about secondary prevention for low back pain, that we're probably not going to prevent, a bout of acute low back pain, but we can help people recover more quickly. And as a result of that, I think clinicians have been exposed to the whole biopsychosocial model. Whether that's changed practice, I don't know, given that I still see some pretty awful practice. But, I guess it's been spoken about as if psychosocial stuff only applies to people with persistent pain, whereas I think every experience of pain is a whole multidimensional experience. And so I guess some people can compartmentalise a wee bit. But nationally, I guess there is more, there's widespread acceptance that a multi-dimensional model of pain is the way to go. It's just the practicalities of how do I do that? What does that look like? That still plagues us. And some people are just not interested. They'd rather fix an angle or a, muscle strength or a spindle or something.
I think I've seen the document you're talking about, and I think it's I mean, my bias is confirmed, so it's got to be good, right? I think like what you say, the specificity is missing when you're thinking biopsychosocially, and I think that sometimes can be lost on people who are wanting to look this very linear path. And I think this leads into kind of a discussion we wanted to at least touch on today, which is the whole sensation versus perception debate, which I know you have been a part of. So I wanted to kind of bring that up.
I've watched the debates online.
So you could have a platform to say your bits on that. So please go ahead.
So I'm saying pain's multifactorial, that it's an experience. And as far as I'm concerned, an experience is something that we perceive. There are below conscious aspects, just like we're not aware when we're on edge always, that we are on edge. But the body is already preparing for fight, flight, or freeze. So I think that's very similar with pain. We've always said in the IASP definition, it's a sensory and emotional experience. And that's about as far as I'm prepared to go. I also know that you can change descending inhibition, and you can change the experience of pain through information, through different emotions. You can change how somebody appraises their pain and judges it, and that changes their relationship to that experience. And that, to me, is where we can do stuff. It's very difficult for a non-medical person to directly touch or influence things like inflammation or neuroinflammation in particular. We don't have the tools. We've got our hands, we've got our words, and physios used to say, well, we have electrical devices, but we don't use those anymore because they frankly don't do a lot. So I think the bulk of us in allied health, which is not non-medical, hate being defined by what I'm not, so I'm allied health. I think we do mainly influence perception and disability. The sensory component of that, we may change through changes in movement pattern. That's putting different movements into the neuromatrix, but I don't know if that's directly changing sensation. I don't know. And my reading, and I've read a lot in the last 4 months about this whole area, suggests that we can't neatly put a dividing line between sensation and perception. Even neurobiologically, we can't say, okay, that bit only deals with sensation and that bit only deals with perception. So I think it's really, really blurry. And as far as practice goes, I'm not sure that it makes a lot of difference. I do agree with John Quintner and the notion of unlearning, because we don't unlearn. None of us do about anything. We simply change the pathways that we use, and we use an alternate pathway, which is why under stress we revert to the original. So we'll go back to that, say, painful and avoidant pathway when we're pushed under stress of whatever kind to go back that way. We never really lose that. We never lose that, in fact. So once you've learned a concept, like bigger than or larger or the same as, those are the sorts of concepts that you can't ever erase. So once we've learned pain, ouch, pain, don't like, don't want, we're not going to unlearn that. Somebody pointed out recently that there are this group of people who really like pain. Well, and they do things like body suspension and tattoos, she says, flourishing hers, and saying these people are really different. Well, no, they're not. They also say this really hurts. So it's not that they're different or weird, and it's not that they're able to change the sensation. They're able to change the meaning and their interpretation of what that experience is. So a bit like you guys who do, fitness, and you do lots of painful, training, and you say, yes, I'm getting stronger, this is really good, if I push myself to this point, I'm going to achieve. So do these people who do body suspension, and they hang by flesh hooks stuck through their bodies and come off the ground. And tattoos, which are, they represent a whole lot of stuff, but in traditional Samoan tato, which is where the tattoo word came from, it's the painful process is necessary because it shows that you're prepared to stand up and count for what your tribe means to you. And that's why people are willing to go through it. So pain has never just been sensation. It's always been something bigger than that. I think part of the confusion lies with it is sensory and emotional at the same time, and it invites us to do something. It's an action. So it's all of that and more. And nothing wrong with that, really.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Fantastic.
that's kind of staking my claim. I'm sure John will come out with some argument, but there we go. That's where I'm at the moment.
No, thanks, Bronnie. That was great. I'm going to listen to that and copy and paste that a million times. That was great. Thank you.
Oops.
That was good. Thank you.
That is great. So just moving into I think the next idea, unless there's anything you wanted to add to that, Eric.
No, that was great. I just like listening to Bronnie talk, so go ahead.
Yeah, 100%. One of the things that always strikes me, Bronnie, is, especially as a massage therapist, we have some people out there that say the biopsychosocial approach is not within our scope because we're talking about psychosocial. And I think also when we bring up the topic of motivational interviewing, because there is that psychological side to it, many would say that it's not in our scope. And I'd love to hear your comments on that. And also we'll get into a little bit more about motivational interviewing and how we can do it.
Yeah. So I think of motivational interviewing and CBT and ACT as these clinical frameworks and their ways of communicating. And all of us communicate. And if I go back to Benedetti, who's Fabrizio Benedetti, placebo neuroscientist, and he talks about the 4 sort of steps in treatment. First of all, is feeling sick. To feel sick, we compare what I can feel with my normal, and we also match that against what we observe in other people around us. So before someone, and then once we've decided that we feel sick, then we go and we seek treatment. So we go and look for the person who's got the designated title of healer, whoever that might be. And in our communities, we expect that people who are healers or therapists have some training and some knowledge, and we've given them that responsibility and the privilege, really, of being able to access information about us that we wouldn't tell everybody. And that is social. That's psychosocial. Both of those aspects are psychosocial. So when somebody comes to see you, they've already embodied in themselves an understanding that they're ill, they need help, and you're somebody who can give them some help. That suggests to me that the whole idea of being ill isn't just this body bit. It's about me as a person. And if we are going to address more than just the body bit, we have to relate to that person. So the third step in Benedetti's series is the meet the therapist moment, which is incredibly powerful. In that meet the therapist moment, we are immediately reading the person. As a patient, I'm immediately reading that person. I'm looking at do they look empathic? Do they look kind? Do they look compassionate? Do they look competent? Do they look trustworthy? Do I believe them? And that is psychosocial, because the way that we demonstrate empathy and compassion and competence is through our verbal exchange, through the context that we see people in, through the way we dress, all of those non-physical things that we do as clinicians. And then we do the treatment, and a good chunk of the work of the treatment has already happened in the process of I'm feeling sick, so I'm going to go and see somebody who I've chosen as a patient who's already indicated to me that I trust them. I've already learned to trust them. So if that's not suggesting that all of treatment is a biopsychosocial experience, I don't know what does. So when we're thinking about how we talk about meaning, person's understanding of their pain, that to me is just being a person meeting another person. I'm saying, what do you think's going on? That's not spooky. That's not, oh, tell me about your childhood. I'm just asking, what do you think's going on? What do you think might happen? What do you want from me? These are tapping into the psychosocial, but I'm not delving into somebody's childhood woes or the way their parents toilet train them or anything. That's not what I do. And I don't think any of us do, but we do have the responsibility to ask, why did you think something was wrong? Why did you choose to come and see us now? Why did you choose to come and see me? That is psychosocial, but it's also contextual. It's also about, here is this person. I want to understand you so that I can know how best to help you. What are you most afraid of? What do you think could happen if nothing changes? What do you think I can do for you? Are all the sorts of questions that we can ask without bothering or being concerned that we're stepping out of scope, because they're not going to lead us into psychopathology. And most people who come to see us for their musculoskeletal pain don't have psychosis. They might have depression. Most people do, and they haven't slept very well, and they're stressed and they're worried about what's going on, and it's been going on for a long time. And they're probably worried, perhaps not anxious with an anxiety disorder, but they've certainly got those things. Everybody's got that. That's just normal. That's not pathological. And I think the concern about scope of practice lies with the fear that I'm going to step into something that is going to make that person worse, and it's going to tip them over, and they're going to kill themselves, or they're going to kill me or somebody else. I don't want to make things worse. Well, I don't think asking somebody, what do you think's going on, and helping them understand what they're experiencing is going to make them worse. I really don't. So I think we've got a duty of care to demonstrate compassion, empathy, and trustworthiness by building that rapport and by asking those questions about what do you think's happening, and what can I do to help you, and why did you come to see me now? What's different? What are you expecting? Those are not super scary questions.
And how often, when you're doing a motivational interview with somebody, or just talking to them when they come into your clinic, and you bring up, like, what do you think is happening, do you get a repeat of what another therapist told them is happening? That my rib is out, my hip is out, my this is out. That yeah. And those things are ingrained into them. That's as soon as they experience some discomfort or pain, they automatically assume that thing is out.
Yeah. And normally I'll also ask them, and so who else have you listened to? What other sorts of things have you understood about what's happening? So I get as much different information about all the things that they've been told. And then I'll say, and now what's your theory? So if you've been told all this stuff by all these people, what do you think's going on? And then we can start to say, so if you think that your hip is out, what might that look like? And how would you know? And how would you know when it wasn't out? So let's explore it. Let's understand that experience in light of your own experiences. And that, to me, is less motivational interviewing and more just guided discovery. Let's help do some movements and find out what this feels like for you. Because your logical conclusion is, if I do this and this hurts, therefore it confirms that my hip is out. But if it doesn't happen, then what's going on? And why? And we may not know the answers, but we can help the person experience. And I guess part of my process is helping the person gain some trust in their own body and what they experience, rather than relying on somebody else to tell them what's going on. You know, like, when did this come on, and how did it happen, and what did you notice that was different, and all those sorts of open-ended questions. Yeah.
But I love what you just said, because to me that's building resilience in people.
Yeah. Because I think if we start to tell a person without asking them to draw the dots, to connect those dots, then we become another sage on the stage, or another person who's telling them stuff. But if we're doing it if we're asking them questions that help them assemble that, then we can ask them, so we've gone through X, Y, and Z. Does anything that we've talked about occur to you as a result of what we've talked about? Does anything make sense to you? What are your conclusions now? So that they can get the understanding and that sense of confidence in their own capabilities. Because it worries me that people feel frail and fragile because they've been told they've had a leg length discrepancy. Who hasn't got a leg length discrepancy? And how could you measure it accurately anyway? Seriously.
I think I saw, I think it was Ben Cormack shared something the other day, and it was somebody on America Warrior Ninja that had one leg, and he's like, so how's that leg length discrepancy?
Exactly.
And the guy's going through doing these amazing physical challenges. with one leg.
Yeah, and still manages it. It's amazing. Mm.
It sounds like a lot of what you're saying about things like guided discovery and motivational interviewing. It sounds like I think a lot of the resistance that comes from kind of the regulatory bodies around it have to do with just not an accurate understanding or a fear that people are going to step out of scope. Would you agree that it's more of a lack of knowledge?
And particularly in a poorly regulated profession.
Yeah.
Where there are people who will start doing regressions and past lives and all manner of weird stuff and put it under the label of, well, I'm doing therapy, types of therapy. I do think there's a misinterpretation when we talk about a multidimensional or a biopsychosocial model. People hear psychosocial and they think psychopathology. You've got some disorder. But I don't think that somebody's relationship with their partner is psychopathological unless it actually is psychopathological. And surely as clinicians, if we heard that somebody's partner was beating up on them, we've got a duty of care at that point to say, hey, this is well out of what I can deal with, but you need some help. Can I help you? Because that's what we do as humans. And if we knew that somebody was seriously depressed and wanted to harm themselves, that could happen whether we ask about it or we don't. All we're doing is asking and then saying, hey, you sound like you're really in a terrible space. I want to be able to help you. Stay here while I phone and get onto your psych emergency team. That's about being responsible as healthcare professionals. Where it gets blurry is where we have, say, somebody who's trained in physical therapy, for example, massage therapy, providing as a therapy something like expressive writing for somebody who's clearly quite depressed. I'd be saying, hold on, that's not my scope. But exercise is really good for low mood. So I see nothing wrong with helping somebody go out for a daily walk. Yeah. That's not outside of anybody's scope. We can all do that. So let's try and take it away from the worst possible and into the most common, which is people are worried about what's going on in their bodies. They can't sleep very well. They're stressed out and they want some help to relax a bit, to feel more confident about their bodies, and maybe they'll be able to sleep better. And let's give them some education around what that pain might actually mean, just to make it less scary. And please don't do past live regression because that's just not a thing.
I agree.
Love it, Bronnie.
Yeah. I think
sorry.
Yeah, I think your explanation is great because I think I agree with what you say is that we have, as healthcare providers, we have an ethical obligation to provide the best quality care that's within our scope. And I think if that quality of care suggests that, these type of questionings and that line of reasoning and questioning that you present is potentially to elicit create a positive response. And I think we have an obligation to take that approach. Would you agree with that statement?
I think so. Yeah, I think people would. Yeah, I think what I was just trying to process something, thinking about when we're trying to create that sense of safety, we're just giving that straightforward information. We're not really delving. We're not getting into something spooky.
Yes.
And yeah, we're just trying to make things feel understandable. We're not trying to delve into addictions or dependence or things that we would see as quite concerning, because that is not what we do.
Yeah.
That's not part of our job. Our job is, well, your job as massage therapist is to lay hands on, give a narrative that helps to explain, help people feel more comfortable. Well, and you get this dedicated time where somebody trusts you enough to disrobe to let you do that. That is incredible. And just being in that place creates a sense of intimacy that is a really wonderful opportunity to help just de-threaten the whole experience. I don't touch people. I just don't. Not with my bare hands.
What are you talking about? Every time I see you, you give a hug.
Well, yeah, I give hugs. Yeah, they're different, but not do.
Well, I'd just like to interject something, because when you were talking about, if somebody, they're having a lack of sleep and maybe going through a depressive state, and if you're with them in your clinic and you're like, why don't you stay here and I'll go make the phone call? I think that goes beyond our responsibility as therapists, because with my background as a first responder, I think that's our responsibility as people.
Yes.
I think it goes beyond just being a therapist. I think that's our responsibility as humans to another human to do that for them and help them in that regard.
I would totally agree. I think we sometimes forget that. We think that we wouldn't, or that we're stepping over scopes and stuff, but we're not. If that was my next door neighbour, I would do that for my next door neighbour. Just because that's what you do. Yeah.
So we've got a few. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it goes right along. I think it was Peter O'Sullivan. I think he said at San Diego a couple of years ago that, treat humans how you would want to be treated as a human in need. Yeah. And so that really stuck with me. And I really like that, just that very simple statement of, what would you need if you were in that person's shoes? I think that's great.
Yeah, we've got a few questions and comments here, Bronnie. One is from our friend Denelda that I had mentioned before. She says, thanks, Bronnie. It was a lovely depiction of words as tools, not just hands as tools. I love the way that you frame the responsibility, duty of care to a couple of skilled hands with an equally skilled narrative about pain. Also, just a spot-on explanation that any verbal exchange constitutes a psychosocial component of any therapy, including manual therapies. Is my understanding correct?
Absolutely. As soon as we start communicating, we've got beyond our hands, right? And all of the person's approach in response to therapy is not just the hand part, but all of the rest of the ritual, which includes the intake. What questions am I asking? And my environment and that sense of trust between us. And some of those are legislated. Our governing bodies say these are some things we have to do to keep somebody feel safe, to help them feel safe. So, that's sanctioned socially as well as psychologically. So let's celebrate it.
Yeah, we've got a few comments up here about how much people are enjoying listening to you, and I think it's all the Canadians and Americans enjoying the accent. As well as just listening to you. But
that's the caramel that I keep eating, because that's what Sandy always calls it. Sounds like I'm eating caramels.
Yeah. So we've got a question from our buddy Anders, and then I think a response from Mariah, who I'm sure you met at San Diego as well. But let's just start with the question, then I'll put Mariah's answer in, and then I'll let you answer from there. So Anders' question is, how do you adjust your approach if patients express resistance to such exploration, saying, you're the expert, you tell me, or I don't care what the reason might be, just fix me? And then the response from Mariah, I think she's responding to Anders here. She says, I'm new to using motivational interviewing, but my response to this is typically something similar to, you've been in your body for X number of years, so I think you're the expert on this topic. For the fix-it one, she says, we might be able to make you feel a bit better today, but if we don't figure out the cause, it's not likely going to stop. So I'll let you take it from there.
I really like that. You've been in your body for this long. You know yourself better. And I'm an expert in topics, but I'm not an expert in your life. I don't know what it's like to be you. I don't know what it's like to live your life. So I don't know the impact that this is having on you as a person. And that's how I've got around it. And most people don't say that I'm an expert, which is probably true. But, because nobody knows what an OT does, really. Except we do doing. But, for people where it's much more familiar, chiropractors put hands on, osteopaths do hands on, massage therapists do hands on, then they are going to be expecting something along that lines. But the other point I'd say is that patients have never said to me that somebody's listened too much.
Yeah.
Never. They've always said, they were busy talking, or they got and did this, and they never listened. So what we're doing is honouring that, the fact that we are able to listen. And even if you're doing stuff while you're listening, we're listening, and that's the powerful ingredient. just as somebody narrates their story to us, they're making sense of their experiences themselves. So I don't get much resistance to it. I get some, other people are quite useful. So you can say, other people have found blah was really helpful. Or, if you've been asking them what sorts of things do you do to relax, I don't relax. And I can say, well, other people have told me that they like to blob in front of TV. Yeah, so you can use sort of normalize it to say with other conversations. You can bring it out that way as well. Yeah.
Nice. I find it interesting because we've been having a discussion about how some people say it's out of our scope, and yet we'll have a patient who lays on a table for an hour and talks about their life and talks about everything that's going on in their life. So I don't get how.
What do you do with that?
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to talk about very personal things, and that's also how we build a therapeutic relationship with them. Is they talk about those things, and while we may not be able to give them advice about that personal thing, just the fact that they're unloading on the table might be enough that it's relieving stress and having an effect on their pain.
And that's all I'm doing really, is listening and reflecting that I've heard. I'm not offering solutions, because how would I know? I might say other people have tried this, but really for most of these concerns, I'm just listening and saying, so what you've told me is this, this, and this. The good things about this choice is this and this. Where does that leave you? And actually, they're doing work. When I learned motivational interviewing, that was one of the most enjoyable things about it, was the pressure on me to come up with a solution was gone. I didn't have to do that. Most people know what they really want to be able to do. They want some sanctioning that it's okay, or they're sitting on the fence. They're just kind of hovering there. Being on the fence is really uncomfortable. It's really sore on your ass. It's even worse. It's true, but it's you need somebody just to help you go one way or the other. And so all I'm doing in motivational interviewing is saying, okay, so on the one hand, you could do this, this, and this for very good reasons. On the other hand, you could do this, this, and this for very good reasons. Now, where does that leave you? Which one seems better for you? And I'm not doing anything except summarizing. It's the laziest job ever. But it's just putting it out there.
A bit of a mirroring conversation.
Yeah. And, if you say somebody wants to know about some exercise that they could do, what do you suggest? Well, tell me what you've tried in the past. What did you like about that? What didn't you like? What seems to be your next best step? Look, I haven't given you any suggestions. I'm just asking. And that person can find their own solutions, just because we've picked out that they were actually ambivalent and just hadn't made up their own minds. We're just laying it out on the table and letting them make the decision themselves, and maybe forcing the decision making at that time as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Eric, I think you still had a list of questions there. Do you want to go in and ask Bronnie?
I think, as this conversation's gone on, I think kind of some of the things we touch on hit all the points, which is great, because I assume this is how it was going to go. So I think the only stuff we wanted to talk about really was, and we had some requests from people just to talk about motivational interviewing, but I feel like you've kind of laid out just kind of a general idea or framework of it. I guess the only thing I would think of is if you had to summarize, like say somebody is a massage therapist or a chiropractor or a physio, what would be some of the key concepts that you would say these are things you could put into your practice tomorrow, assuming that we went back to work, which we know none of us are right now. What would be some key things just to kind of to think about and to take into your practice?
I think the spirit of motivational interviewing is the most important part, really, which is that people don't wake up in the morning to make a really dumb decision. All right, get out of bed and say, all right, I'm going to do something really stupid today. They get out of bed, they do what they've done, they make a decision based on the information that they have at the time and their best judgment. So most people have an accident or do something dumb out of error, because they didn't have enough information at the time, or because they saw the immediate consequences but didn't see the longer term consequences. So if we always approach people with the idea that they were really doing their very best at the time, and the decision that they made didn't work out for them, but that didn't mean that it was something that they did on purpose. They just made a judgment error, as we do, based on they didn't have enough information to know what could possibly happen. And some of them, think about adolescent males, not that you two would have any experience whatsoever. But
I think we're still
yeah, 6 foot tall, bulletproof blokes who do risk taking. That is an essential part of learning for boys. It is probably part of learning for girls, but we do it slightly less physically ambitiously. but that is part of learning. And if we stop kids from doing dangerous pursuits, they don't learn boundaries. They don't learn that if I do dumb stuff happens. So part of it is about recognizing the stage that somebody's at, that some people actually need to hit a point where they've tried all the things that they know about before they're ready to do something different. And so if we move away from motivational interviewing, we have a look at acceptance and commitment therapy. One of the things that we start with there is creative hopelessness, which is the idea that everything this person has done to help themselves has been perfectly reasonable, normal, expected, traditional stuff. It's just that it's not working in this context, because our brains are really good at trying to solve problems, but some problems are not solvable. And pain is one of those problems that can very often not be solvable. We don't know the cause of many types of pain. Who knows the cause of lots of our headaches or our backaches? But we do know what we can do about it. And that's where we can come and start to help people work out what they might want to do. And so I'm thinking about the contextual nature of the things that we do to help ourselves. So we've often talked about good and bad coping strategies for people with pain. And one of the bad ones is supposed to be passive therapy. But actually, it doesn't have to be a bad strategy. It's just bad if that's all you ever do and you never learn how to do something for yourself. And this is where you guys can change that narrative really, really well by saying, okay, so I've done this part here to keep this, to maintain this. Here are some things that you could try. How do you feel about that? That's about how important it is. How confident are you that you could do this? Can we check in another couple of days to see how you're going with it? So you give people some choices and you find out, establish that it's important enough and they're confident enough. And if they're not confident, can we build their confidence by maybe you could show, I could record it on the video, on the phone, and show me how you do this movement that helped you. And we can just, model, we can learn how to boost confidence through past experiences, through scaffolding supports around people. For example, contacting them by text in a couple of days to say, how are things going? What happened? Or getting them to video themselves doing that exercise and send it to us. So we can say, hey, that looks great and a really good job. Even as we do our physical exam, we could do something along in our narrative to say, hey, this looks really strong. Yeah, it's a wee bit sensitive here, but hey, overall you're looking really good. So we're trying to build a resilience, a positivity all the way through with everything that we do. So for motivational interviewing, I think it's always recognise that people don't do dumb stuff by choice. It's happened because it's didn't know enough information, only looked to the short term and not the long term, didn't think about all the different contexts and got stuck because it worked once. Why wouldn't you do it again? So we want to help disturb that. We might use this creative hopelessness, which is say, look, I know you've tried really hard, you've done X, Y, and Z, and it hasn't helped. I wonder if there's an alternative way we could look at this. and then you can put an alternative across. So it's kind of recognizing that generally people aren't idiots. They do dumb things, but it's not generally because they've chosen deliberately to do dumb things.
It's funny when you say that. It's funny when you say that, because it's echoing in my head listening to Lorimer Mosley, and he was talking about people are injured, and he goes, like, a year down the road, your chances of re-injuring yourself are very minimal. And he's like, because you'd have to be an idiot. And he stopped and he was like, and so wait a minute, when I say that, I mean, like, you'd have to, like, get drunk and go out and do something stupid. He's like, there's nobody intentionally goes out and be's an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, there are some things that lead us to make less wise decisions, right?
Yeah.
Like gin and spa pools, but we won't go there. I'll never live that one down. Is that a gin and tonic?
What's that?
Yes.
I love a good gin and tonic.
Oh,
We'll have to treat you to a couple in San Diego next year.
and that 2 and no more.
Two a day.
Yeah, not 2 bottles.
Gin and tonic in a hot tub.
Not in a hot tub. No. Oh dear.
So while we've got you, I'll just put it out, and it usually takes a minute or two for it to come through. But if anybody who's watching or listening has any questions, feel free to post them, and we'll do our best to answer them, especially while we've got Bronnie here.
So what do you guys see as the big challenge for massage therapists in Canada for you guys? What do you see as the next big challenge, apart from not being able to see patients right now?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's several challenges, and I think one of the big ones is that we're not regulated across the country. So when you're talking about if you come from a 3-year program, then you can be accepted into this pain science masters or this pain masters, is that we don't have that standard of education across the country, and we're trying to work towards it. But I think that's one of our biggest obstacles, is that we don't have that standard. Certainly
not standard here. It's just we've been lucky that we've got two programs in particular that are really good, and the people that come out from there really know their stuff, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, Eric, I don't know if you've got another one.
I mean, this is a whole other conversation. I got to talk about this for hours. This is my thing I like to talk about. But I think, the biggest thing I think we have here is we have basically we have an outdated curriculum, which is used to inform the educational competencies of the colleges, as well as the regulatory authorities tend to, like, that's how they base their licensing and their exams and that stuff. So you get a lot of really well-meaning therapists out there, but their information is outdated or incomplete. And I think, I mean, my interest is I would love to see more of like a biopsychosocial, less hands-on modality focused, more towards like understanding and interacting with a human focus type of thing, where we could still be within our scope, but we would just have a different understanding of how to be better practitioners, kind of following a lot of the stuff that you say and that you talk about. And that's the barrier I see. That's a big one, but things are getting better, I think, compared to how they were a decade ago, but it's slow, right?
Is it ever?
It's very slow.
What do you think of the idea of a scope for people who are working with people who have pain that's not aligned to any particular discipline, but just I am a therapist who happens to work with people who have pain?
I love that idea.
If you like.
Yeah, I think Richard McElmoy and I have talked about that lots, and I think he's watching today. We've talked about that, about like just there's too many different silos of people.
Yes.
They're all trying to do kind of help the same. They're trying to help the same person, but with a different, like they're all taking a different approach. But if we were just,
and then they're saying, "Oh, it's mine. It's my precious. Don't touch it."
Yeah.
I think, what? Hold on.
Exactly.
Because ultimately, I keep saying this, that a best physio, OT, psychologist, massage therapist, chiropractor who do good pain management do essentially identical stuff.
Yep.
We might focus on a slightly different part, and we might use some slightly different tools, but overall the philosophy is the same. And I can't see why we can't just scrap the silos and remember that we're people who know a bit about pain and want to help others. You know, it just seems to be something that needs to happen to counter the biomedical that is still so entrenched and strong. We need this other broader focus, and you know, as a group, we are far bigger in numbers than the medical profession and the biomedical model, and yet we squabble amongst each other. How dare we? You know, that's just seems so silly.
Yeah. We've got a couple of comments here just when we're talking about things in Canada. So Danny comments and says that with regard to massage therapy in Canada, there's not a wide understanding of the biopsychosocial approach. And I don't know if PEOL is a abbreviation that I don't know, or if she's referring to people, but or patient population. So yeah, we would agree. And Jocelyn throws in another good comment that lots of challenges, but the new one is, what is everything going to look like after COVID-19? Because people are struggling with what's to come. And I don't think that's just with massage therapists. I think that's regarded every profession right now.
Yeah. Jocelyn's going to have a new career. She's going to be a comedian. I know, because I've seen her video clips. See them.
Yeah, well, she threw a good comment in here that your ACT course in San Diego had such a profound effect on her practice, and she just wants to thank you for what you do.
Oh, Jocelyn's amazing. Look, I
and
just
then
had such a good time there. It was so great.
Yeah. Nice. So we got a couple more questions here. So one from my friend Sarah Black, who's an athletic therapist. She says, when do you feel like the psychosocial aspect is becoming out of scope? How do you refer out without making the patient feel like it's all in their head or they're not open to counseling?
Yeah. Well, sometimes you can use an OT who works psychologically and actually sidestep it. But I usually start by saying, look, it sounds like you've been through a hell of a time. And it can really help to have somebody else that you can go to, that you can just dump on instead of family, friends, and me, because I'm feeling like I'm out of scope. How would it be if I got in touch with somebody? And I make it easy. So I talk to the therapist that I'm suggesting, and I even phone them. So I can do it in the clinic, especially if you think the person's at risk. Because if you find somebody who's really depressed and finding it really hard to think straight, everything's an effort, it's too hard to do it themselves. So we can make that easy. So I encourage you to a couple of things, to first of all develop a policy for and a process in your practice for anyone who is suicidal, who you understand might be feeling suicidal or homicidal, because it happens as well. So have that already written and documented with a clear process that says this is what we should do inside our practice. I don't know if you guys do that already. Have a network of people that you trust, that you can say, hey, we can talk to one another, so we can actually refer in with a trust that the clinician that we're referring to is going to take this person seriously, and be able to facilitate that by phoning. Same as I have, psych emergency and the community psych team phones, I always have their numbers handy, so that if somebody's really distressed, I'm not leaving them stranded, because my duty of care is to make sure they get to somebody who can look after them. Sometimes that might be a partner. Sometimes it might be taking them to the primary care physician. Sometimes it's taking them into emergency. But even if you just hang off the end of the phone to somebody from your community psych team that can help, that without letting the person go anywhere, that creates the safety environment. So I would do that first. And then the second thing is to say, look, empathize. You're in a really rough situation. I'm not sure that I can help you, but I'd really like to get you some help. Here is a person I trust, and this is what they might talk about, so that you're not making it as if this is the person's pain is imaginary, but more that it's, you're in a really awful situation. This is hard. Having an invisible condition that nobody understands very well is the most difficult thing to deal with. And I keep emphasizing that to my patients as we're coming up to doing the last group in my 6-week program. And I'm saying to them, you guys are the most resilient people I know, because you're dealing with this incredibly tough situation and you haven't done anything stupid to yourself. So you guys, I salute you. And I'd like to be able to get that sense across to you guys, that when you're working with somebody, if they turn up and they've had a really rough week, they've turned up. Isn't that amazing? Even though it's tough, they've been able to schedule the appointment and come in and see you. And they've prioritised caring for themselves. That shows strength and resilience and organisational skills. So let's use that, because that's something that we can build that sense of trust in their own resources. It's that resilience thing again.
Love that one.
So I kind of do it from a strengths-based perspective in many ways. I kind of think, well, the things that you've done to help might not have helped, but you flip them over, they actually show a degree of strength and capability that perhaps we don't always recognise.
Nice. Sarah, I hope that answered your question. And we've got another one here from Danella, who's saying, can you address the notion that a helper must figure out the cause of someone's pain in order to help them with pain? You would, I think, say that one should not hitch the possibility of relief of pain to finding an underlying cause for most persistent pain.
Absolutely. I don't know why I have fibromyalgia. I just happen to have it. And I don't know the cause. That's just the name that we give. And diagnoses are only really as useful as they are in clumping together people with similar symptoms and a presumed underlying similarity in the mechanisms involved. We actually don't know. We're guessing. And so I don't think we need to find the cause. We are helping people deal with the reality that is, whether we know what's caused it or we don't. We do know that if you have pain and you add things like I'm feeling stressed, I've got a low mood, I hate my job, my family don't understand me, and I'm not sleeping very well, that makes our experience worse. So we can, in my job anyway, address those factors, and it will change their experience of pain, but it might not take the pain away at all, because I don't know what causes fibromyalgia. It just happens to be. Same as people with ankylosing spondylitis. We don't know why some people have it and have lots of pain and others don't. So yes, we've got a genetic marker, but why does Bo, my partner, respond so well to Humira and have no pain at all, and other people with the same diagnosis and the same genetic factor not respond? We don't know. So I think when we're thinking about pain, we like to think about the disease that we're dealing with, but I think we've got to remember that pain's an experience. So we're actually talking about the illness of having pain. I am unwell, which is a personal, the personal impact that pain has on me as a person, not my leg that's sore. Do you get the kind of difference? It's, disease versus illness, impairment, function, disability, participation is the ICF model, but that difference between being ill and having a disease, illness is that sort of what it is like to be a person who happens to have that disease.
I think a great comment that was dropped in here is from somebody that you absolutely love, from our friend Odette, where she says, we're not dealing with a body, where it's also a mind.
Odette's wonderful. Hope she's found a cat.
Was she looking for a cat?
Yeah, she's up in Palmerston, north of her mum. And she took a cat. The cat went walkabout, as cats do. Cats are derpy things. I'd rather have a dog. I have a cat as well, but I have Miss Molly.
And you got
quite good, actually.
She's not bugging you during this little Facebook Live?
No, I think she's outside bugging my partner who's doing buildings. He's been like a bear trapped in a cabin. He does not enjoy being under lockdown. He likes to roam the hills. Nice. And you can't do that. No. And we've got some more comments from other people that took your course in San Diego
saying that she seconds it. It was good. Jocelyn saying it was so good. Sarah saying it was good. So if you're ever not sure of whether you should take Bronnie's course, there's some good feedback from some people. And of course, Sarah saying thank you and Danelda saying thank you for answering their questions. And I don't
time with the X course. It was lovely. It was so good.
Oh, and Odette says that she's still up there. She's listening with her mom right now.
Cool.
Perfect. So there doesn't seem to be any more questions coming through. So I think what we'll do is just give you a huge thanks, Bronnie. Can't thank you enough for your time to come and hang out with us and share your knowledge and for us to listen to that wonderful accent for a little over an hour.
And next time it'll be a beer in San Diego, or I might even venture north. I'd really like to go back to Vancouver, just say. I need to go
we'll bring you to Victoria.
Yeah, you should come. Yeah, because I took your course. I first met you when you were in Vancouver. I think it was 2015. I think is when
it was. Yeah, and I've been to Vancouver Island. We went to Edmonton, and I was in Toronto, but I haven't been anywhere else. So I'm open to offers.
You and I talked about it before, but we'll maybe for 2021 we'll look at one for the island. Yeah,
that'd be a lot of fun.
When we were allowed to travel again.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you here.
At the moment now, you're going to have to book yourself an extra 2 weeks quarantine if you enter our country. Looks like that's going to be
the same thing here.
Yeah, same thing here too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
So that's good. Lots of feedback on there. Again, Bronnie, can't thank you enough, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again soon and have another chat. But we'll let you go for now. If you want to stay on, we'll have a quick chat before we end it. But we'll end the live portion of it now. And thanks for everybody who listened in and asked questions tonight. Can't thank you guys enough for helping out.
So I'm just confused.